Earlier this year, Prime Video announced that they were going to play the series finale to The Boys in theaters. And I specifically stated that I was not going because I predicted that The Boys was going to have the same outcome that Stranger Things 5 did. And I was actually correct. So, a quick breakdown of The Boys. This is their final season. I already wasn't liking it too much for multiple different reasons. I felt this version... Okay, so let's start off with the most obvious. The past 4 seasons, in any superhero show or movie, one of the key elements is that there's a lot of fighting and a lot of action. And there was almost none of that in this season of The Boys, even when they had the opportunity to. For example, A-Train versus Homelander, we could have seen a really cool speed versus strength battle, but instead Homelander chases down A-Train and kills him by simply snapping his neck. There's so many missed opportunities as well, and it definitely had its interesting points that were just a letdown. Some of the stuff just doesn't make sense. Like, for example, so in the episode before the finale, Homelander gets the V1 and becomes more powerful than ever. Then in the actual finale, when Butcher and Kumiko and everyone pulls up to the White House, Homelander, with his powers still in the V1, he is struggling against Butcher, Kumiko, and Ryan, who is already significantly weaker than them. Remember during Herogasm, when Homelander, without the V1, was struggling against... He held his own pretty well against a fully powered Butcher and Soldier Boy. And I'm not going to include Huey, because Huey's a little weakling and has no significance to this show whatsoever. But Homelander was actually stronger without the V1 than with it. Like, here's the thing, if you can so easily march into the White House and beat the shit out of Homelander, with his powers, mind you, why was William Butcher so afraid when he saw Homelander get the V1 and Butcher told everyone to run? He was that scared that Butcher, who never runs from anything, actually got scared for his life and he told everyone to run. Next episode, his fear is completely gone. He marches up into the White House and beats the living shit out of him, takes away his powers, and beats the living shit out of him again, and then actually kills him. The ending was just stupid. I did like how they ended the Deep. I just wish that they had done it a lot sooner. Out of all the characters in the show, they kept the most annoying one until the very end. Now, the fight between Homelander and Butcher was long and entertaining, but it was just unrealistic. Considering the fact that Homelander has been so strong that it took them 5 seasons to figure out how to kill him, and he's now stronger with the V1, it just doesn't make sense how he's struggling so much with the V1 against Butcher and his crew. Then Ryan comes in, and like I said, Ryan was already significantly weaker. The story didn't make sense. So here's what happens. They take away Homelander's powers with the blast from Kumiko that they replicated from Soldier Boy. And Butcher uses a crowbar to crack his skull open and kill him on live TV. Later on in the episode, Butcher plans to use a virus to kill all Supes. We knew this was his plan from the very beginning. Huey doesn't agree with that, so he shoots and kills Butcher. Now that, to me, just didn't make any sense. First of all, I was never really a fan of Huey. Remember in Season 1 when his girlfriend Robin got killed, and then he immediately just went to Starfire? This man took no time to grieve whatsoever. And he's always been a pussy little bitch. It's Starlight that's always coming to his rescue because he's such a fucking pussy. He's such a pussy, and it's like, bro, he's just so whiny. I can't fucking stand him. And it just didn't make sense for him to kill Butcher either. They were friends in a sense. I know their friendship kind of grew apart throughout the seasons because Butcher's kind of selfish. But here's the thing. By killing Butcher, you just invited another superhero to take Homelander's place. Because this isn't the Marvel Universe, okay? The superheroes in this show are actually the bad guy. Most of them are fucking evil. The ones who are not evil, like Starlight, they're not powerful enough to actually make a difference because they are significantly weaker than the rest of the superheroes. I mean, name one time Starlight was any use to the team other than saving Huey's ass. Oh, and she didn't even save him in the first episode. That was A-Train. That's how useless Starlight has gotten. See, I've always sided with the villains. I know when we're kids, we're taught that we should hate the villains and love the heroes. But as I've gotten older and as I've watched some of the more mature superhero shows, I've always sided with the villain. Because a hero would let his brother die to save the world, but a villain would kill the world to save his brother. So then I ask you, who's the real hero? It seems to me that it is almost always the supervillain who is driven by envy, anger, revenge, you name it, but the supervillain has very good intentions and is often right, while the superhero is trying to enforce some false propaganda to make himself look like the bad guy. Sorry, not the bad guy, the good guy. In some iterations, for example, the Joker, a lot of times these supervillains, they are not even that villainous. They are just straight up honest in a world full of lies. So they killed off Butcher. Now what's going to happen is more superheroes are going to come back. And basically, there's just going to be another Homelander, or there could be 5 Homelanders this time. My point is, you just undid all the work of the past 5 seasons to kill Homelander because you just invited another Homelander to take the dead one's place. But if Butcher had released the virus and managed to kill all the supes, that would never have happened. And oh, but what about the innocent ones? Well, the only innocent superhero, if you ever want to call her that, is Starlight. And I'm sure y'all could have figured out a way to save her. Y'all figured out a bunch of other shit. I'm sure there was a way y'all could have, I don't know, put a mask on her or something so that the virus affects every supe but her. Or maybe do something like, I don't know, destroy all the V1 on the planet, because so far the only natural-born superhero is Ryan, who had his powers taken away anyway. And every other superhero, they basically inject themselves with the V1 drug, and that's how they get their superpowers. So just destroy that. But my point is, killing off Butcher was so unnecessary. Killing off Homelander was, but killing off Butcher was so unnecessary. And the comic book ending of The Boys is actually much better. Because, first of all, let me address Black Noir. Black Noir is supposed to be one of the best fighters. He's supposed to be basically the Batman of the show. And he is so easily killed by the Deep. You're telling me that the most skilled fighter in the 7 got killed with a fucking cord? That's ridiculous. But in the comics, Black Noir is actually a disguised copy, a disguised clone of Homelander. And see, what happens in the comics is that Black Noir starts to do things while wearing Homelander's regular costume. And Homelander originally knows that he didn't do these things, but because he's being shown evidence and video footage, he starts to go crazy. Because on the one hand, he knows he didn't do this, but on the other hand, he's seeing himself, he's seeing evidence of himself doing this. So it eventually drives him crazy, and then he turns into the Homelander that we know from the Boys show, where he's basically a narcissistic psychopath. In the final fight between Homelander and Butcher, it is not Butcher who kills Homelander, but Black Noir. Black Noir unmasks himself and reveals himself to be the contingency plan for Homelander should Homelander ever go evil. And so Black Noir actually kills Homelander, and then Butcher uses the crowbar to kill Black Noir. There were also a lot more superheroes in one of the comic panels. There's a whole bunch of superheroes flying over the White House. And here's the thing, Prime Video released a poster showing this. It shows William Butcher walking to the White House with a crowbar in hand, and then over the White House we have Homelander in the center, and then he's surrounded by the shadows of a bunch of faceless superheroes all wearing capes. So we all got excited because we all thought we were getting the comic book ending, or at least something similar, because we know that this Black Noir is not the same Black Noir from the comics. They didn't give us that. They didn't even give us the only superheroes were Homelander, the Christian guy who screams like a siren, Allfather, that was his name, Starlight, and the Deep. 4 superheroes, that was it. It was just fucking ridiculous. So, like, why did you put this on your poster? And there's so many movie companies that do that, too, where they put false things on their poster. Or I've noticed this. I used to notice this a lot in Disney movies when I was a kid. Whenever a new trailer came out, and then I would finally get to see the actual movie, I would notice that there were things in the trailer for the movie that were not in the actual movie. Like, whole scenes, bro. And it fucking angered me because it felt like false advertisement. And there's still companies that do that today, and I feel like that's false advertisement. Like, y'all are deliberately getting us hyped up for something that's not even in your show. It's fucking ridiculous. And so, the Boys finale almost directly mirrors the Stranger Things finale, where the entire final season just feels choppy and rushed, and then the finale is such a letdown. And both finales were played out in theaters. It seems like the reason why they did this is to create room for spin-offs, but that's not how you do a fucking spin-off. You want to know how you do a spin-off? This is how I view it. If your show is good and I like your show, and the finale is good and I miss the show, I'll watch the spin-off show. But if you have a great show and then you botch it in the final season and the finale is dog shit, I'm not gonna watch anything by your company ever again. So Stranger Things released Tales from 85. I'm never watching it. They also said that they're going to do a spin-off on Nancy Wheeler. I am not watching it, especially now because I also don't like Nancy Wheeler's character. She went from being girlish and feminine to fucking woke-ass girl boss. They completely changed her character and her character arc, and I don't like Nancy Wheeler. I don't like the Nancy Wheeler from today. I like the Nancy Wheeler we had back in 2016. And as far as the Boys finale, they are releasing something about Soldier Boy like years before the actual Boys show, which I won't be watching. And they're also releasing Vought Rising, which I won't be watching. And also, during the whole... It was between seasons 4 and 5, they released the show Gen V, which was a spin-off that introduced a new girl who was almost as strong as Homelander. Well, for starters, I never watched Gen V. I couldn't even get past the first episode. I got maybe halfway into the first episode, and I said, yeah, no, this is dog shit. It didn't have me hooked on my screen like the first episode of The Boys did. It was not good. It was absolute dog shit. The powers were fucking weird. Like, you're telling me this bitch has to cut herself so she can shoot out blood from her hands whenever there's a fight. It was not a likable show. And then I heard online that you don't necessarily need to watch it to see the finale of The Boys, but it would help. Well, here's what happened. In the final season of The Boys, the Gen V cast shows up twice, says a few lines, and then go away. Their presence has no impact on the plot whatsoever. And people online were saying, what was the point of watching 2 seasons of Gen V and setting up this character that could possibly rival Homelander if they weren't even going to show us? Like, she just showed up for 2 scenes, said a line that had no impact on the plot, and then disappeared. She wasn't even in the final fight. It's ridiculous. So, I'm glad that I never watched Gen V, and now, knowing that I don't have to, I never will. Moving on, it's good that we're finally getting some good television, because there's been a lot of shitty shit that's come out this year. Euphoria just concluded their final season. And Euphoria is, I would consider, one of the best shows on the planet. Let me point out a few things about this. People hate Euphoria for hypocritical reasons. People, for starters, hate Sydney Sweeney. I still don't understand why people hate Sydney Sweeney. A lot of people this year are saying that they don't like Sweeney because she's playing an OnlyFans creator. But in the past 2 seasons, Kat, the fat girl, she played a porn star as well. And keep in mind, at the time, Kat was a teenager, making her the product of child porn. In this new season of Euphoria, Cassie is a grown woman making the decision to sell her body for money. But she's a grown-ass woman. So that, in my opinion, is actually better than the minor participating in child porn in the first 2 seasons. So it's actually very hypocritical how people say, oh, I don't like Sydney Sweeney because she played an OnlyFans creator. First of all, if you don't like, it's so stupid to me when people don't like an actor or an actress simply because of a specific character that he or she played. At the end of the day, they are given a script that they read, and then the director, he's in charge of the casting, the lines, he oversees the editing, he's basically the overseer. He's the one who makes a final call and decides what gets put out, if it even gets put out at all. So if anything, hate the director, not the actress. I think people just hate Sydney Sweeney, and I think it's so hypocritical because the things that people name about her that they don't like, they like it perfectly fine, and everyone else, oh, she played an OnlyFans character. So Kat was an OnlyFans character, or not necessarily OnlyFans, but a porn character, and y'all loved her. Y'all said you missed her this season, and y'all said you wanted her back. Oh, well, Sydney Sweeney, you know, when she paired up with Dr. Squash, she was selling her bathwater. First of all, that was probably a marketing technique. She probably didn't actually sell her bathwater. Secondly, Megan Fox is doing the exact same thing right now. And people are actually comparing Megan Fox to Sydney Sweeney, saying that Megan Fox was hotter in her prime than Sydney Sweeney is now. What's another one? Oh, I don't like Sweeney because she's a very sexualized character. You know, she has a lot of news scenes in. Okay, so a lot of the people who hate Sydney Sweeney for being too sexualized love Sabrina Carpenter, who is too sexualized. Now, see, here's the thing, too. Someone like Sydney Sweeney, she has to be given a script by someone, which means they likely are telling her to do these nude scenes and sex scenes. Sabrina Carpenter is kind of more independent because she makes her own music and she does her own concerts. So Sabrina Carpenter is quite literally consciously choosing to be dressing provocatively and doing, you know, like the Juno poses and stuff like that, while Sweeney is literally given a script. But even if you're not a Sabrina Carpenter fan, there are plenty of other actresses who have gone nude, from Ana de Armas to Margot Robbie to many of the most beloved actresses in today's day and age. So for people to go online and say, oh, I don't like Sweeney for whatever reason, most of them can't provide a reason as to why they hate Sydney Sweeney. But those who can, it's often very hypocritical, and the things that they hate about her, they like about other people in Hollywood. So I genuinely do not understand the hate that Sydney Sweeney keeps getting from Hollywood. You know what I think it is? Because Sweeney did not used to get this much hate until people found out that she was a Republican. I think what happened is people found out that she was a Republican, and despite the fact that Sweeney has never offered any political commentary on anything ever, people decided to hate on her for that. Except we know that if you hate on someone simply because you don't like who they voted for, that's fucking stupid. So now people are trying to come up with reasons to hate her, and it's only making their case worse. Now, here's what I've always liked about Euphoria, is it's very realistic, and I think this is the same reason why people dislike Euphoria. Euphoria is probably one of the most controversial shows ever made, because it shows you the consequences of those consumed in sin. And I also noticed that the final season of Euphoria was highly based off the Bible. But it shows Rue, who is a drug addict, and Jules, he's got his own issues, from transgenderism to everyone here has issues. But I would say primarily Rue being a drug addict, Cassie being a sex addict, Nate also being a drug addict and a closeted gay man, and Maddie having narcissism issues. Throughout the show, it shows a lot of the characters dealing with drugs, sex, and alcohol, and endless partying, and it shows the effects that it has on one's life when you live that lifestyle repeatedly. Especially on Rue, because she goes to get help, she overlaps, she's clean for a while, and especially in the finale episode, it really, really helped with the realism and showed what actually happens to people who are drug addicts. It shows what happens, for example, with Cassie's character, which is why I like it so much. It shows what happens when people go into the porn industry or the adult industry. Because the whole strip clubs, porn, it falls under the same umbrella. Now, before we get into the premise of the Euphoria finale, I like to point out, people are complaining that Jules was not very present in this season. All he did was paint and bitch. I'm personally glad that Jules took a backseat this season because I never liked his character. From the very beginning, I always felt like he was a whiny little bitch who just whined and bitched about everything. And keep in mind, too, remember when Rue got that suitcase full of drugs and then Jules went ahead and told her mother about it? I understand that Jules thought that Rue was doing the drugs and she wanted to get Rue clean because he was concerned. But that's not what friends do. Friends don't snitch on their friends to their friends' parents. That's not what a good friend does. And the best thing you can do is just mind your business. Now, if you care someone a lot, obviously you're going to tell them if they're developing self-destructive habits. But it gets to a point where you have to realize that you cannot fucking control people. And that if they choose to keep making bad decisions, you have to let them face the consequences of their own actions. If Jules never told Rue's mom about the suitcase, there would have never been a giant misunderstanding and a giant fallout. Rue would have never been in debt in Lori, and Rue would have never gotten into all the trouble that she did in Season 3. Now, as far as Jules being a transgender, y'all know my views on this. Transgenderism does not exist. It is completely made up. If you're born with a dick, you're a man. If you're born with a vagina, you are a woman. It is that simple. And anyone else who thinks otherwise has a mental condition and needs to be administrated into the asylum. But here's the thing, and I think Jules' transgenderism is based on the actor in real life because she chooses to identify as a transgender woman. But here's the thing. Hunter has admitted to having a dick in the podcast before. Hunter identifies himself as a transgender woman who is gay and attracted to women. So in reality, Hunter Schafer is a man in a dress who is straight and attracted to women. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, I'm transgender, but I have a dick. So you're a man in a dress. No, I'm a woman, I identify as a woman, but I'm gay and I'm attracted to other women. So you're a man in a dress who's attracted to women, therefore you're a straight weirdo. Like, what? But I feel like Jules really never had much of a character arc. She was kind of just there as Rue's first love interest. So if you think about it too, Rue's actually straight or bisexual because she does have an attraction to women throughout the show. But it is heavily implied that Rue is gay from the beginning because her first lover is Jules. But Jules is a transgender man with a dick. So in reality, Rue is a straight woman who's just attracted to guys who pretend to be women. In the final episode of Euphoria, now Rue gets tied up in a bunch of shit. And this is another thing that I like about the show is that it shows how your poor life choices can not only impact yourself, but also impact those around you and those you care about. So in the final episode, it starts off from where the last episode left off with Rue back at Lori's house, and she gets into trouble when Fish Lips Faye double crosses her. She runs out and tries to escape, and it is saved by one of Alamo's guys who shoots the cowboy in the horse and takes Rue away. Rue goes back to Alamo's place, and she is in pain because the cowboy basically caught Rue in his little rope and dragged her for probably about 50, 100 feet before he got shot off his horse. So Rue is in pain. She's been shot at. She's been dragged across the farm. She's gone through it. Alama knows that Rue is now a DEA informant, thanks to Maddie running her mouth. And he now has a vendetta against her, but he plays her. He brings her in, he calls her his employee of the year, and he says, go ahead, take a week off, go to the hospital, get some stitches, and just send me the bill. And he gives her a bottle of painkillers as well. So Rue goes to her mentor Ali's house and crashes there, and she takes one of the painkillers and dies in her sleep. Because that bottle of painkillers wasn't actually painkillers, it was fentanyl disguised as painkillers. And Alamo used this to kill Rue, and it was actually very smart, because not only is it a psychological betrayal, but it was also the perfect way for Alamo to cover his tracks. Because he could have just killed her in his bar, but it would have been more obvious that Rue was murdered. However, I'm sure because, considering the fact that Alamo most likely runs a human trafficking ring, I'm sure that they could have covered it up. But it would have been more obvious if he would have just straight up killed Rue in his bar, and it would have caused him more trouble. This way, not only did he psychologically betray her, but because Rue spent years as a drug addict, when she overdosed on the fentanyl, everyone assumed that she overlapsed, and that's what killed her. Nobody even suspected that it was a murder attempt. The only person who knew that she was deliberately killed was Ali, and he knew that because he looked on the bottle and he saw Alamo's name. Now, it is theorized that when you die, your brain replays the happiest 7 moments of your life, whether it's memories or whether it's a fantasy, but it typically involves the places you loved most and the people that you loved most. When Rue's final 7 minutes play out, we initially don't even realize that it's her final 7 minutes, because we don't realize that she's dead, or even, fantasizing. But in her final 7 minutes, Fezco breaks out of prison. Rue goes to pick him up, and she revisits her old neighborhood and her old house, where she is reunited with her mom, and then finally her dad, before she passes away in her sleep. Now, during this scene, I noticed something. We start to realize that it's a hallucination when Rue is reaching out for her mom. And the scene goes back and forth from Rue reaching out for her mom's hand and her just on Ali's couch reaching out with her headphones in and reaching out towards nothing. I now realize this, though, going back and rewatching that scene. When Rue is reaching out for her mom, I think what actually happened is she was just reaching out in pain because she was suffocating from the fentanyl overdose. Because if you pay attention, when Rue hugs her mom and then her dad, that's also her final moment before she's officially dead. And in those final moments is when she was reaching out. So I think she was literally suffocating. And so they animated her death pretty well. But the finale ends with Alamo seeking vengeance on Rue by tracking down... Wait, I said that wrong. My speech is messed up today. Ali seeks vengeance on Rue by tracking down Alamo to his strip club and shooting him. And it featured a betrayal because they did a dual-styled shootout, but Alamo got betrayed by his right-hand man, bishop and his gun didn't have any bullets, giving Ali the opportunity to shoot and kill him. And Rue's death was Ali's breaking point because Ali kept a notebook of all the people that he had lost, and he lost a lot of fucking people. And he was a very strong, God-believing man. He's the one who guided Rue away from drugs and to God. He was basically her father figure. But it seems like losing Rue was just his breaking point, especially when she didn't die of natural causes, when she was actually deliberately killed by somebody. It ended up working out in the end because now Maddie and Cassie are free from Alamo's grasp after the events of episode 7. And I like to point something out about Christianity, because a lot of Christianities will say, oh, well, he shouldn't have done that because the Bible says to turn the other cheek and forgive thy enemy. But those kind of Christians who believe that peace is the answer, is the only answer to absolutely everything, these same people would tell you that David should not have thrown the stone at Goliath. Revenge, generally speaking, is not healthy. You should not allow emotions like revenge, hatred, and anger to consume you, but there is a time and a place for it. There is a time and a place where it is necessary. That's why we have those emotions. And I feel like Ali killing Alamo was justified, and Alamo 100% deserved it because he was a very evil man who did a lot of evil things. But the final moments of the show end with Ali visiting a Texas ranch that Rue was fond of, that Rue had visited as well. And he has dinner with the family, and we see Rue's spirit pay them a visit in the final moments of the show. And after watching the show, I now realize, because throughout the seasons, Rue's always narrating the episodes, and she's always speaking in past tense. So this whole time, Euphoria has basically been Rue on the other side in the afterlife, telling her story. Because once she dies too, Rue also stops narrating, and it just shows what happened in the next 2 months following the aftermath of her death. But I feel like what happens in Euphoria throughout the show is very realistic. This is probably one of the most realistic shows I've ever seen. And it really showed you the consequences of your actions, the consequences of those who just live and marinate in their bad habits and either don't fix themselves or they wait too long to fix themselves. But it also shows how broken someone can be depending on their environment. For example, Rue's mom, I've been saying this since even before the final season. I don't believe that Rue's mom was a very good mother because I saw the way that Rue's mother treated her. And I always thought that must have been what drove Rue to drugs in the first place. Because you don't just wake up and choose to be a drug addict. Usually something happens. Usually people go through a pain that's unbearable. And that's when they turn to drugs or alcohol. And sometimes you face an unbearable pain, but you have friends and family that are there for you and support you. And sometimes you're forced to deal with it alone, and that's when people become addicts. It doesn't seem like Rue's mom was ever really there for her. Even throughout the show, it seemed like Rue's mom spent more time yelling at her and eventually cutting ties with her daughter completely, rather than trying to be a supporting mother who was willing to listen to her daughter, who was willing to help her daughter out. The whole vibe I got from Rue's mom was, drug addict Babs, you're not my daughter anymore. You're like a bad person. She wasn't very supportive. And then you look at Rue, the rest of Rue's life, she's got broken and estranged relationships with Lexi, her friend, with Jules, her first lover, with just about everyone in her life except for Ali. And this is in part due to Rue's poor decisions affecting her personally. But this is also due to the people that were around her just being shitty people. Jules is a shitty fucking person. Maddie, while her character did improve later on, let's not forget, she was a fucking bitch. Nate was also a fucking bad person, and he met his fate in season 7 when he got bitten to death by a rattlesnake. Honestly, I feel like the only person who never really changed was Cassie. I mean, are we really that surprised that she got into OnlyFans considering the way she was acting in the first 2 seasons of Euphoria? And Cassie's still the same, just a whiny little bitch who cries about everything and shakes her ginormous titties. Cassie's the same person, but I mean, other than that, I thought the show was a direct reflection on what happens in real life, because I've seen that happen for myself. I've known people who have died from drug overdoses. I used to be in that crowd where I would also go out on a pretty much daily basis, and me and my friends would go out, we would party, and we would drink, and when I saw how self-destructive it was, I got out of there. And it just changed people. Some of the best people that I know turned into really shitty people based on who they hung around and the habits that they developed. And it's actually really sad. But upon doing my own research into this and also experiencing some of it, that's why I relate to Euphoria so much. And I can appreciate the art of it. And I think the biggest reason why people have turned on the show and people don't like it is because it probably hits a little too close to home. That being said, that's the end of today's episode. Thanks for listening. This is the Adonis Podcast.